So I want to introduce our guest speaker today. Today we get the privilege of hearing from Jared Roth, who, yes, we'll get to cheer from in a minute. Yeah, we'll do that in a minute. But Jared is a friend of Faith Center for a long time. He was actually the pastor to our pastors. He worked before Brad and Audrey came here. They were at Evergreen, and they worked under Ann and Jared Roth. And so we're lucky they gave him up to us, right? They gave him the okay, fine. I guess you can take them. We're so thankful for them. So, and they are retired now from Evergreen, so they're living the retired dream, right? And I think they squeezed us in between trips is the word on the street. So they actually have an adventure they're going on of their own. So I'm sure maybe we'll get to hear what that is. I'll let you tell us. But would you join me in welcoming Jared up here to the stage?
Well, no adventures for me, but next week when Ann speaks, it's all about adventures. That's right, yeah. So, hey, I want to know, I have a question for you, and everybody has an answer for this, and I'd like for you to respond by raising your hand, okay? And it has to do with last Sunday. How many of you watched the Super Bowl? How many of you did not watch the Super Bowl? Several of you don't know where you were last Sunday. I know a lot has happened in your life this week, and I understand if you're still going back there to remember what happened then. So Super Bowl is kind of fun. Our family kind of likes football, and Jacob, the 8-year-old, is so into football that he is still complaining about the reffing at the game several weeks ago when the 49ers were knocked out of the playoffs. And he was telling me that he heard of this new thing called the XFL, right? And his dad, our son, shook his head and said, "We are done with football. Jacob needs a football break. We are all in on basketball. We are done with football. It's the Roth family football rules. When the Super Bowl is done, we're done with football for a while." Yeah. I think his name is Les Morris. He's the general manager of the LA Rams. He talks about some of the language that they use and practices in their organization. And he talks about what they call panic rules. And he says, you know what it's like when everything is just crazy? You don't know what the other team is doing, and you have the wrong players on the field, and the play hasn't come in because the headsets and the helmets aren't working, and the shot clock. I'm into basketball. I think they call it the play clock is counting down. He said, when you go into panic, you need panic rules. In fact, let me read a quote of what he had to say. He says, when there's chaos and your brain is panicking, go to your panic rules. Sometimes I think in the chaos of life, we need some panic rules. I know for me, when it comes to my emotional life, I need some rules. And I'd like to talk to you today about my anger rules and give you a little peek insight in a few minutes into what those are, but I'd like to set it up with some context. This is not your story, but I think that you'll feel into my story because it's close enough to your story. 4 weeks ago, I received an email. I was sitting at our kitchen counter. I was working on the computer, and an email popped up, and I unwisely allowed myself to be distracted by a message from a man who has been a good friend for 15 years. And I mean a good friend. I mean the kind of friend that we stay in touch. He and his family a couple of years ago moved several states away. We've continued to be in touch. We have been in their home. We've visited them. We've taken them out for dinner. And we've retained, let me call him Tom. Any Toms here today? Okay, good. That's a safe name. Fairly common, but safe. Tom and I have stayed in touch, and that's probably at least 2 or 3 times a month by a phone call, which is always filled with laughter and fun, or a text or two. I open the email, and I am stunned. This is how it starts. Life is different now that I've moved far, far away. I now have new friends and a whole new life. Hopefully, my stupidity and ignorance in choosing friends are in the past. Time will tell. Yeah. Now, it's a long email. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but those first two sentences caught my attention. Because while he was confessing that he used to be dumb and now he's smart, the inference is clear, isn't it? Only because he was so dumb was I chosen to be a friend in the past. And now that he has moved far, far away, he has new, improved, and wonderful friends. And then he launches into the body, and he has two major grievances with me. One of them was something that he heard I had done 25 years ago, which, by the way, I had not done. In fact, I resisted the decision that was made in that being done. And the second was he charged me more recently with promising to do something for him and not doing that. And I do believe, in fact, that I had done that. So he goes on to finish by saying, please don't waste your time and mine with emails. I no longer care. Time for me to move on. Tom. Well, what are some of the things that I might have felt? Go ahead and help me out here. This is interactive. Discouraged? What? Angry? Frustration? Yeah? Relieved? I wish. I might work toward that, but yeah. Sunday morning, we wouldn't say pissed off. I wouldn't do that. But anything that kind of begins to approximate that is kind of, yeah. Now, what happened for me, of course, was that I had separation, right? Something died. When something dies on us, I was served divorce, friendship divorce papers here. And when we lose something, we start the grief process, don't we? And we start with denial. The first thing I said was, this cannot be true. But I don't live in denial very long. I move right to anger, and I camp out there for a long time. And so that was, out of all the other stuff I was feeling, anger was the primary emotion. Now, for you, you might process grief and loss differently. You might move right on to bargaining, which is where immediately we'd be in touch and we would try to say, what did I do wrong? And can we fix this thing? Can we repair this thing? What can I do to make it right? That's bargaining. Some of you go right all the way to number 4, which is depression, and you just begin to stew in the sadness of this loss. And eventually, if we're healthy human beings, eventually we get to a place, we hope, of acceptance where it's not what we would prefer, but we're able to move on and function in life well. I just went right to anger. I was so ticked. And I did a reasonable thing. I immediately, at my computer, with my next keystroke, drafted a response. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think sometimes I have flashes of brilliance. And this was a Picasso. It was delicious. It was a beautiful response. It had pseudo-graciousness to start with, and then I shredded every point of his charges because obviously this fool would want to have my superior point of view about how life actually happened in the past at the events that neither of us had shared in common. And I finished with some pseudo-graciousness, and I felt very satisfied in my anger. Now, I am old. It took me a long time to learn this, but I have learned that it's never optimal to send an email or to communicate in any other medium when my heart rate is accelerated. So this little simple rule I have for myself is, if my heart rate is beating, I am not sending, I am not talking, I am not responding. But was I ever ticked? Anger rules. There's this great verse. I bet you're familiar with it. It's in Ephesians chapter 4. 2 verses actually are coming on the screen. And it tells us some things about anger that are utterly profound. The first phrase says, in fact, would you read it out loud with me, the first sentence? In your anger, do not sin. Stop there for a minute. That is brilliant. It assumes anger. Now, I grew up in a pacifistic home, and part of our culture was to not be violent, and they backed that all the way back up to not expressing anger, and backed that up all the way into not feeling anger. See where we went with that one? We started out at a good value, and we backed it up into dysfunction. In fact, God gets angry, and we get angry. And the reason we experience anger is because we are created in the likeness and image of God. And God is emotional, and He expresses that emotion. He feels it. He expresses that. We're made in God's image. And notice here that the Apostle Paul assumes anger. So he says, in your anger. And in, by the way, is kind of a pervasive dunking in, isn't it? It's like going in the swimming pool. I'm in it. When I was writing my email, I was in my anger. There was not much room for much else there other than my brilliant barbs and witty isms that I was giving him. I was very much in my anger. That's the assumed state. And then it says, while you're in it, don't sin. So isn't this brilliant? This subtle distinction between the emotion and doing stupid. The difference between experiencing fully the emotion and blaming the emotion for the actions that come out of it. And while in the emotion, how unhelpful it is to blame someone or something else for making me feel that way. So it could go like this, couldn't it? Tom sent me an email and he made me mad. Well, that's a rather immature framing, isn't it? Tom sent me an email, and my response to my sense of loss from the contents of that email was anger. I am in anger. I know when I feel, I know what I feel, and I can choose about how I'm going to express it or not. And this is what God's wisdom says, in your anger, don't sin. And then I love the next phrase. He says, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. So, in my anger, an emotion given by God, thankfully I'm human, I'm alive. In my anger, don't sin. This is how I can process the not sin part of it. Just don't do stupid until the sun goes down. Just let it go. So here's my deal. If you like to nurse your anger for a while, get mad in the morning, right? If you like to nurse your anger and nurture it, don't get mad at 4 in the afternoon. I mean, it's winter. You've only got 14 minutes before. You got to be very efficient at processing it if you get mad now, right? Yeah, summer's a great time to be mad, yeah. So what's the recognition here? God knows how He designed us. Well, anger is in our bodies, isn't it? And we feel it because of physiology. And there's cortisol, and there's adrenaline, and there's other stress hormones that surge through our body. And those don't just flush on through. After the catalyst, it's at least 20 minutes before those finally get worked through. In my anger, don't do dumb, and understand that it may take you a while to let that anger go ahead and get on a conveyor belt that goes out of your system. But if you don't let that anger go ahead and work its way out, it is an emotion that passes. If you don't let it pass, and if you decide to live in it, then you're going to give evil an opportunity. It's like a seed bed in a hothouse for bitterness and for hatred to begin to nurture and mature. So of course you'll be angry. But in that, don't sin. Process it well and let it go so that you don't create an environment where bitterness and hatred build up. I love how the Message version says it. It's coming up here. In fact, I'm going to invite all of you to read it when this slide comes up. Can we read it out loud together? Go ahead and be angry. You do well to be angry, but don't use your anger as fuel for revenge. And don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry. And don't give the devil that kind of foothold in your life. Yeah. I need anger rules because I experience anger, and if I do what is reflective and reactive in the moment, I'm creating a seedbed for bad things to happen. Now, I want to give you, when I end, which is not yet, I want to give you toward the end, I want to give you my 3 anger rules. But I want to give you some context for why I have chosen those rules. And they all come out of the book in the Bible called Romans, and it's all out of chapter 12. I encourage you later today or tomorrow morning to read the whole chapter. I'm going to pick 3 verses out, and then at the end of the talk, I'm going to pick a 4th verse out that kind of ties it all together. But this is why I need anger rules. So our first verse out of Romans 12 is verse 21, and it says this: Don't be overcome with evil, overcome evil with good. So maybe you've been over at the Oregon coast. Did some of you know that it's cold out there? Yeah. So I've taken a polar plunge or two. I'm not planning to do that anymore, but I have. But some of you have been surprised when you're out there. Maybe you're knee-high in the waves, and a sneaker wave comes off from 45 degrees, and you don't know that it's coming, and it can just knock you right down on your knees into the sand, into the surf. So you have a choice at that point. You can be overcome by that sneaker wave and stay down in the surf, or you can choose to stand up and overcome its impact on you by taking a stand again. So it's not if or when evil's going to come our way, right? Yeah. When it comes and knocks us down, don't be overcome by it. When you get the nasty email from Tom and it knocks you down, don't be overcome by it. Don't live in it. It did not create the context of your life. But stand up and do something so that you overcome that in a helpful way. Why would this wisdom of God be so important? Well, I think that you already know this, but let me just mention it because I think it's helpful, is that for most of us, when we experience fright, that we immediately react. In fact, it's subconscious. It's before our conscious mind even engages. We react. So the last couple of weeks, Ann and I have been hiking around in the deserts in Arizona and New Mexico and Texas, and we have been warned at each trailhead about snakes. Now, we didn't see any snakes. We saw snow, but there were no snakes. We'll go back in August and we'll find some snakes, I understand, but probably most of us had the experience either with a snake or with a bee. I love watching people when bees come their way. You learn so much about their reflective activity, and bees can make even people like me dance. It's just amazing, isn't it? What happens when we are frightened by something like that? Well, we either, and here's the words, we either fight, flight, or freeze, right? Yeah. So I fight back. I take my hiking stick and I go after the snake, or I take my hiking stick and I run back down the trail, or I freeze in place, which, have you seen little kids do this sometimes with bees? And the bee will just sting them and sting them and sting them, and they'll just stand there and go, wah! Yeah, the kid's not being irrational. The kid is acting out in one of the 3 ways that we respond to fright. Yeah. I need to know when I get hit with a sneaker wave what I'm going to do. I need some rules about this. Because if I don't have anger rules, I am going to fight, I am going to flight, I am going to freeze. None of those helps me overcome in that situation. So I get the email, and guess what I did? I fought, didn't I? Absolutely fought. He's going to give me the old punch of, I used to be dumb and now I'm smart. You were my friend because I was dumb. I've moved on. Now I'm, oh, baby. I'm going to throw some stuff at you, Jared. You did something 25 years ago. You did something last month. Oh, man. He punched me, and I counterpunched. That's what my email was. It was a fight response. I could have done a flight. I could have just closed the computer and left and distracted myself. And, I could have binged Netflix for the next 24 hours. There's a lot of ways to flee. Or I could have frozen and found myself locked in that emotional and mental state for the next 3 days and worked myself into a major short-term depression, consumed and overwhelmed with what had happened to me. I need anger rules because I don't want to get stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. The second verse in Romans chapter 12 that's helpful is verse 17, and this is what it says. Do not return evil for evil to anyone. I like most of that verse, just not the last verse. Not the last word, right? Yeah. Because I have a list of a few people that I think I deserve the right to have at least a short blacklist over there, right? Yeah. Everyone is just way too comprehensive for me. That's like 7.5 billion people, or I guess we have 8 billion people now. What does it say? It says, don't return evil to evil for anyone. Why is God giving us that wisdom? Well, he knows how he made us. Physiologists tell us that among the other cells that are in our brain, we have mirror neurons. And mirror neurons help us respond to another person in a way that gives us the disposition toward responding in like kind. That's why, generally speaking, even with strangers, if you walk into a space and look at them in the eye and smile with a sincere smile, they will probably do what back? Probably will smile back. Probably. If you watch people at a coffee shop, it's just wildly fun to watch. If you watch one of them lean forward and put her elbows on the table, it will probably be within less than 30 seconds where her partner will lean forward with elbows on the table. If one leans back and crosses legs, the other one within a minute will probably be leaned back and crossing legs. This is a function of mirror neurons. It is how we are disposed to respond unless we're thoughtful about it. Unfortunately, when evil comes our way, we're disposed to respond with evil. And so he says, I don't want you to respond in kind. Now we say, isn't there a law of physics that says for every action there's an equal and opposite? That will never be violated. Never be violated. So here's how it works. I get the email, and I have been maligned. I've been told I'm a lousy friend, and I have been charged with things that I have not done. That's like a punch in the cheek. And the mirror in me says, I'll take care of that. For every action, there's an equal reaction. And this is where Jesus turns this energy on its head. Jesus said, when you're hit in one cheek, what do you do with all this energy? Turn the other cheek. The law of physics isn't violated. For every action, there's an equal reaction, but it is not the same reaction. Oh, it's purposeful, it's meaningful, it's energetic, it has impact, but it's in the opposite spirit. Well, I have some anger rules, and those helped me think a little bit about that, and I thought just before I hit send, maybe, since my heart rate is about 158, I'm sweating profusely, my limbs are shaking, and I'm probably about to blow a gasket with high blood pressure. Maybe I should save this as a draft. Just maybe. And fortunately, I did. I need anger rules because my tendency is to find myself in a state of fight, flight, or freeze. And my tendency is to mirror the action that came my way. And I need anger rules number 3. And here's the third verse that comes out of Romans 12. It's verse 14. It says, Oh, it goes from bad to worse. This is the last one. This is the last one, I promise. Would you read it out loud with me? Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Damn it. I'm going to redeem that. Some of you are not happy with me right now. I'm going to redeem that moment. Yeah. So here's the deal. When my friend wrote the email, this is what I felt. I felt that our relationship that for 15 years had been reciprocal and had been on the same level playing field, and that we have both given and we have taken in the relationship in equal kind, and that no one owed the other one anything. It was in equilibrium. I felt that he had moved to superiority and told me, I used to be dumb, and now I got smart. I used to like you, and now I don't. And now I know stuff about you that causes me to write you off. And I felt from a position of superiority that he was judging me. And I think much of my anger that was evoked was because I framed what I was reading in those terms. Do you know what it feels like to be judged? From a period of superiority that someone else has taken? Judgment's tricky for us, isn't it? Because doesn't your mom tell you, make good choices? And doesn't that imply that we are making a decision from among options? And isn't a word for that decision making a good judgment about which option to take? And all of us would affirm that we want to make good decisions? And then we end up with Jesus saying, don't judge or you will be judged just the way you're judging. What does that mean for us? I think in part it means this. When we move to a superior place over the other that says, I am right and you are wrong, and I'm going to tell you about that, and I'm going to make you feel about my superiority. I think Jesus says, don't do that, or you'll be on the other side of that as well. Now, what was evoked in me in my anger was a response to do exactly the same thing, to make judgments of superiority about him. To now level the playing field by going above him and saying, you're still dumb and ignorant. You're still so dumb and ignorant, you're making judgments about me, about stuff that you didn't experience, weren't a part of, and furthermore, you're wrong about those. And my email, which is now a draft, thankfully, was filled with superior judgments about him. Because I was fixing him where he was wrong. I need anger rules because my intuitive, reflective, reactive response to anger is often a state of fight, flight, freeze. Often wants to express itself in ways that are hurtful and harmful, including judgments that I'm making and reporting about others. So I need some anger rules. I need God's wisdom to overcome my reflective reactions. So what did I do? I've got a draft. I decided I should at least wait until the sun goes down. That was 2 p.m. That was about 6 minutes, wasn't it? A month ago. Yeah. Got up the next morning. Felt a little better. Knew that the email was mirroring. It was a punch for a punch. I thought about it and I read it and I thought, I believe everything that I just wrote. But I don't think it's going to help. So with a keystroke, I deleted the draft. That was painful. That was a beautiful document. I wish I could share it with you today. It was almost poetic judgment. It was so well done. I deleted the draft. It was incidental. I just was thinking about it last couple of weeks that I've been preparing to talk to you. I kind of smiled because it was about 2 o'clock the next afternoon. So it was about 24 hours later when I thought, I'm not going to send him anything. We email, we text, we phone call, but our warmest exchanges are on the phone unless we're face to face. And so I thought, I'm going to give him a call. My guess is that he won't pick up, but that's okay because I'll leave a voice message. I just called and said, hey, man, I got your email. Thanks. I always appreciate your reaching out. Sharing a voice. I said, hey, as I read through it, there's some stuff that you might want to talk about. I really have a different point of view on some of those things, and I think that they're pretty important. But I said, on the other hand, sometimes I've discovered in a relationship like this that sometimes the specifics aren't that important. If you care to talk about it, just reach out anytime. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of forget those things. What's really important to me is you and our relationship. And I hope things are going well for you, and I'll be in touch. I'm very proud of myself for doing that. Very, very. Yeah. So notice what I did was, it was a unilateral communication. Now, our relationship is reciprocal. A friendship has to be reciprocal for it to be sustained over time. But not every communication in a friendship or a relationship has to be reciprocal. And so I made it unilateral on purpose. I didn't ask for a response. I didn't ask for information. I didn't imply that a response was going to be coming. I just reported some information. I tossed in a joy burst. I tossed in a peace bomb into his life. He didn't respond, but it gave me an opportunity to have recalculated the emotional environment between us. And I've decided to keep being his friend. So over the last 4 weeks, I've sent 2 or 3 texts like I would have over the last few years. In other words, I have continued to act the same. And I have made sure that those texts are unilateral, not reciprocal. They don't demand anything. And I'm moving forward in the relationship. Now, I promised that I would end. With my 3 rules, anger rules, and here they are. If you're listening, listen fast. If you're taking notes, write faster. Here they go. Number 1, anger rule, feel. Yeah, got to feel it. In your anger, know when you feel, know what you feel, name it, know where it came from, know what it'll do to you if you don't express it well, acknowledge it, honor it as a part of God's creation in you, and know that it won't make you do anything but honor it. I experienced the emotion of anger. He didn't make me angry. I had a response of anger. I am not angry. That's an identity statement. My identity is not anger. I am experiencing the emotion of anger right now, which is a response to a loss that I've just been surprised with. Feel it. And you'll actually enter into some of the experience of God. First of all, feel it. Second, breathe. Your mom was right. Take a deep breath. Count to 10. She's absolutely right about that. Take that deep breath. There has to be the pause. Physiologically, what's happening is that subconsciously we react in those ways that I described earlier, which may save your life in a crisis, but in a relational situation will only act to kill the relationship. You need to find a pause so that your conscious mind catches up with your subconscious. So when the subconscious triggers emotions, you've got to have a pause to figure out what's going on so you can act like a smart human. And you can be led by the Spirit, which is a choice that we make, not necessarily a reflex that we have. So Paul says there's all these kinds of acts of the flesh, and they include all kinds of nasty things that end up harming ourselves and others. And then there's this fruit of the Spirit. And if you are led by the Spirit, your actions will carry the residue of this kind of fruit that always feeds into a relationship positive things. So whatever comes out of Jared toward Tom has to be wrapped in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, and self-control. Otherwise, I'm not being led by the Spirit in that. Breathe, breath, spirit, pneuma, ancient language, spirit, breath, same word. God breathed into humans life. Jesus, when he wanted his followers to be filled with the Spirit so they could carry on his life and his power and his love, breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. As we end today, I'm going to pray for you. I'm not going to come breathe on you. Thankfully, anyone happy about that? No goofy. But we're going to invite the breath of God's Spirit to breathe across our lives in some fresh and some new ways so that we are so baptized with, infused with, saturated in, inundated with the breath of God's Spirit that when we feel and then we breathe, then number 3, we can act. And we must act. We must act. We must respond. That energy that anger has created within us is to be useful and creative and powerful and helpful and restorative. We must act. But when we act, it's often in the opposite spirit, with the same energy and power in a different way that ends up healing and restoring instead of hurting and hating. So we read this. We read this. I promised the last verse. It's still in Romans chapter 12. And it's verse 18. Would you read it out loud with me? This pulls it all together. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. 3 sections. I love it. If it's possible. Does that leave room for other possibilities? Yeah, every healthy, sustainable relationship has to be reciprocal. If Tom don't come around, it ain't going to be a good friendship. Okay? If possible. Here it is. Circle of control. As far as it depends on you, Jared. Tom's responses or lack of responses have no control by me. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So how Tom and Jared doing? Well, it's complicated. Jared's busy being friendly, and Tom is busy doing something else. So if I come back in 5 years, I'll tell you how that all worked out, or didn't. And it may be a wonderful story of reconciliation, and we're hanging out together, and we're buds. Or possibly, it'll be a story of a restraining order against a stalker named Jared Roth up in Hillsboro. And I won't be able to text anymore. We don't know how it's going to turn out. But we do know this, that you can have anger rules that lead you into the following of the Holy Spirit, and on the other side of your reaction to power that comes against you will be equal power that has the possibility of healing and bringing health where there was hurt. We're going to pray. Team's going to come. We're going to sing a song. The prayer and the song are going to be the same. different medium, same content. And the prayer is, God, help me, because I can't do this. I've learned how to respond in anger in ways that are not all helpful. I have habits that are deeply ingrained. I have a family of origin that shaped me early. I have neural programming that is the software that I default to. I forget in the moment, and I do crazy stuff. I need your help. And that's where we come to Jesus today, which, by the way, did you see Jesus through this whole story? Isn't this God toward you and me? Isn't when I shake my finger at him and I judge him for being incompetent and uncaring and unengaged and not faithful and not helpful and not my buddy? He says, what am I going to do with that Jared down there? And he says something that's even more powerful, like, I so love the world that I'm going to give my only son, so that whoever believes in him won't have their life just dissipate away, but will experience life everlasting to the fullness. The God that when I shake my finger at him in anger, he gets my email, my text, reads my post about him, says, I just can't help loving him so much. I'm going to overcome that with my love. Let's pray.